There we go. So again, welcome everyone. We're going to get started with some housekeeping items. Please submit any questions that you have today via the Q&A section of Zoom. So you'll see a Q&A section down on your Zoom control panel, and we have a screenshot at the bottom of the slide that shows you the Q&A icon. Please submit any questions. We have our customer support manager here today, and he is going to be trying to answer as many questions as he can during the webinar. And we'll also be having a question session at the very end. If we have time at the end, we'll be answering some questions live. Any questions that we don't get to this afternoon, we will make sure to follow up with everyone after the webinar. We're also going to be sending the recording of this webinar as soon as it's available and made accessible, as well as a full transcript of the webinar for you to refer back to. Please note today that a lot of this information is brand new. This legislation of the Title II requirements was just signed into law in April, so last month. So please note that the content that we cover today is for information sharing purposes and should not be used as legal advice. We have a lawyer on the call with us today, so I just wanted to put that disclaimer in there that we're just sharing the information as it's developing. We have two options for captions today to make things more accessible. If you would like to access the live stream text captions, please go to the show captions, please go to the Q&A section, and there will be a link there that our captionist has provided, and then you'll have the stream text link for the live captions. If you want the automated Zoom captions, then you will click on the closed captioning icon on your Zoom toolbar, and that's what that red arrow is pointing to in my screenshot down there. All right. Our goals for today are to discuss the Title II updates and all the new requirements. We are very honored today to be joined by Stacy Valerie Peace, who is Georgia's state ADA coordinator, and she and our ICT specialist are going to be going over all of the new Title II updates and the new requirements and trying to explain how they impact higher education, how they might impact you in your role, and how to go about trying to make sure you're meeting all of these requirements within the new timelines that have been provided. So we'll start with the Title II updates, and then the second part of our webinar is going to be a brief overview from each of our unit managers about the different accessibility services that we have here at CIDI. So you'll hear about our ICT and website accessibility team. I will present briefly on the eText team that I manage. You'll hear from our captioning and audio description experts, our Braille experts, the student accommodation manager, supervisor, and the Tools for Life team. So it's a lot to cover, and I'm going to hopefully keep everybody on time today as we go through. So again, we welcome all of you. We're going to start with our Title II updates and new requirements, and I'm going to pass things over to our ADA coordinator, Stacy Peace.
Thank you, Valerie. I will first share some background information regarding the new final rule. On April 9th, 2024, the Department of Justice announced the new final ADA rules on web content and mobile applications. These rules were published in the Federal Register on April 24th, 2024, and will take effect 60 days after publication on June 24th, 2024. This significant change will require a coordinated effort by all public entities, which includes public colleges and universities. Recipients of federal funding covered by Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, which can include higher ed institutions, can also expect these same requirements applied to them in the near future. Next slide, please. The basic requirements of the new final rule are as follows. Public entities are required to ensure that both the web content and mobile apps that the public entity provides or makes available, either directly or through contractual licensing or other arrangements, is readily accessible to and usable by persons with disabilities. So how is this achieved? This is achieved in part by complying with a specific standard of level AA success criteria and conformance requirements as outlined in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG 2.1. Large public entities with total populations of 50,000 or more have 2 years to meet the standard. Small public entities with total populations of less than 50,000 have 3 years to meet the standard, and this applies to institutions of higher learning in the following ways. Under the new final rule, public state universities are considered a state entity. Therefore, they will have 2 years to meet the standard. However, county community colleges located in a county or city with 49,999 or fewer residents will have 3 years to meet the standard. Public entities must meet this standard unless they can demonstrate that compliance with the rule would result in a fundamental alteration in the nature of the service, program, or activity, or would result in undue financial and/or administrative burden, which can be a very high threshold to meet. Next slide, please. As I previously stated, the new final rule covers a public entity's use of mobile apps, whether they are developed, owned, and operated by the public entity or by a third party like a private company. This means that when it comes to external apps, public entities will want to ensure that their purchasing contracts with private companies ensure compliance with this new final rule, so that the programs, services, and activities the public entity provides via the app are accessible. Some examples of external mobile apps that institutions of higher learning may use are apps like Park Mobile, which is used for parking on college campuses, and apps like NutraSlice, which is used to view college dining menu options. Next slide, please. In limited situations, some kinds of web content and content in mobile apps do not have to meet this new standard. There are 5 types of exceptions, and they are archived web content. Well, this includes content that is not currently used. This information may be outdated, not needed, or repeated somewhere else. There are 4 different criteria that the content must meet to be deemed archived web content. Please review the rule for further details. The second exception is pre-existing conventional electronic documents. This can include word processing, presentation, PDF, or spreadsheet files that are also available on the Title II entity's website or mobile application before the date the Title II entity must comply with this rule, unless such documents are currently used to apply for, gain access to, or participate in the public entity's services, programs, and activities. The third exception is content posted by third parties. Third parties are defined as members of the public or others who are not controlled by or acting on behalf of the Title II entity. However, this exception does not apply if the third party is posting due to contractual, licensing, or other arrangements with the Title II entity. The fourth exception is conventional electronic documents that are about a specific individual, their property, or their account, and that are password protected or otherwise secured. There are 3 criteria items that must be met to meet this exception, and they are: the documents are word processing, presentation, PDF, or spreadsheet files, and the documents are about a specific person, property, or account, and the documents are password protected or otherwise secured. And the last exception is pre-existing social media posts. Social media posts that are made by a Title II entity before the date the entity must comply with this rule do not need to meet the standard. The rationale here is that meeting the standard may be difficult to do so, and additionally, social media posts are usually intended to provide updates about things happening at the time that they were posted in the past. Next slide, please. To assist Title II entities with understanding the new standards, the federal government has provided definitions. These definitions include a definition for web content, mobile apps, WCAG 2.1, and WCAG 2.1 level AA. The term web content refers to the information and sensory experience to be communicated to the user by means of a user agent, such as a web browser, which includes code and markup that defines the content structure, presentation, and interaction. This also includes text, images, sound, videos, controls, animations, and conventional electronic documents. The term mobile app means software applications that are downloaded and designed to run on mobile devices, such as a smartphone or tablet. WCAG 2.1 refers to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines that were recommended on June 4th, 2018. Please note that WCAG is incorporated by reference in the rule, and it is not in the rule itself. And lastly, WCAG 2.1 Level AA includes criteria that provides web and mobile app accessibility to individuals with disabilities, including those with visual, auditory, physical, speech, cognitive, and neurological disabilities. And now I would like to introduce Johan Rempel, Manager for the Information and Communication Technology, or ICT, Department at CIDI. Johan?
Thank you so much, Stacy. So as Stacy outlined there we go. As Stacy outlined some of the exceptions, one of those were password protected documents that pertain to personal information or sensitive content. This is a pretty significant change to Title II. In the original notice of proposed rulemaking, and that allows individuals to provide comments and feedback, the department proposed exceptions to the requirements for certain password protected class or course content of public elementary, secondary, and post-secondary institutions. The Department of Justice eliminated that exception altogether in the final rule, and this is pretty significant, especially for educational institutions. So under subpart H, password protected course content, and I underline and bolded course content because if it's personally identifiable information or confidential information, that there is an exception to that. But course content will be treated like any other content, and public educational institutions will generally need to ensure that content complies with WCAG 2.1 Level AA. Next slide. So some of you may already be familiar with WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. These are technical standards on web accessibility developed by the World Wide Web Consortium, also known as W3C, a very robust set of guidelines that are recognized throughout the world. So WCAG is based on 4 guiding principles that are often referred to as POUR, perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. And we don't have the time to go into this in detail. This could be an entire workshop or course in and of itself, but perceivable really is about perception from the senses, whether it's someone who's low vision or colorblind needing sufficient color contrast, whether it's someone who's deaf or hard of hearing needing captions. So perceivable is really how a person accesses that content. Someone who's blind who may need a screen reader to be able to access that content. Operable refers more to how that content is being accessed, whether that's through the keyboard or a peripheral device that rides on top of the keyboard user interface. Understandable. So can the individual easily understand the content that's being presented? And robust really refers to it being device agnostic, whether it's desktop, mobile, laptop, particular web browsers. It really should be, the content should be robust enough that it shouldn't matter which web browser or device that a person is actually accessing. Next slide. So people often get caught up with the different versions of WCAG, and I just wanted to emphasize here that WCAG versions are backward compatible, and I liken it to the operating system on your smartphone, for instance. If you're using Apple phone, right now the latest version is 17. When version 18 comes out, that doesn't mean that 17 is obsolete. The same holds true with WCAG. So the NPRM was published prior to WCAG 2.2 coming out, which is the latest version that was finalized in October of 2023. But WCAG 2.1, in comparison to 2.0, has some essential changes to it. They added new success criteria to address mobile accessibility, users with low vision, users with cognitive and learning disabilities. Next slide. So here are some concrete examples of how lack of digital access can really impact people with disabilities. Individuals who are blind or low vision, it could impact the fact that images have no alternative text, functional elements cannot be controlled with keyboard, low contrast. Individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing, audio without transcript, multimedia without captions or transcript, and individuals with limited manual dexterity, clickable areas that are too small and have restrictive time limits, individuals with learning or cognitive disabilities, unstructured content with no visible headings, sections, or topics, unexpected actions, such as a redirect when an element receives focus. Next slide. So this is important enough that I was going to include a slide just for this alone. The Department of Justice recommends feedback from individuals with disabilities. We have to keep in mind that this isn't just a checkbox process, that at the end of the day, this is about providing full and equitable access for people with disabilities. Although subpart H of this part does not specifically require manual testing by individuals with disabilities, because requiring such testing could pose logistical or other hurdles, the DOJ recommends that public entities seek and incorporate feedback from individuals with disabilities on their web content and mobile apps. Next slide. So what should we do now? This, this is going to be a major change for a lot of organizations, not just state and local governments, but educational institutions across the board. So here are some tips and strategies to keep in mind. A lot of these can occur concurrently. This isn't necessarily a linear accessibility roadmap here. But on a high level, establish an accessibility steering committee. So determine clear delineation of roles and responsibilities, personnel and financial resources. Policy development and implementation. This would certainly be spearheaded by the legal, HR, and senior management, IT, and representations from various stakeholders within your educational institution. And procurement, current and future vendors, including contractual language. Remediation, so where do you start? An inventory of the digital assets is really essential. It's hard to know what's accessible and what's not unless you've actually tested that and determined its current state. Identify short-term and long-term needs, roles, responsibilities, and QC process. This can seem like an overwhelming task initially, but that low-hanging fruit, those short-term wins, are really essential. But those long-term needs, keeping in mind, this is sustainability in mind. This is not a one-off, a quick and easy fix. Training needs, so carrying out a needs assessment, determine the skill level and existing gaps from an accessibility standpoint, and then making sure that any current or future training is role-based, specific to that individual or their responsibilities. And then plan for future sustainability. Again, this isn't a quick one-off. Assess and reassess workflow, digital assets, processes, and ongoing training needs. And the last statement on this slide, which I felt was really important to emphasize, is that accessibility is a journey. It's not a final destination. It's not simply a checkbox process. It really needs to be baked in and incorporated as the culture of the organization and more permanent changes. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the Information and Communication Technology Unit and the website accessibility initiatives taken with that unit. Before I do that, though, I'm going to take some broad strokes on who some of our customers are at Center for Inclusive Design and Innovation. We work closely with Georgia Tech here on campus. We also work with University System of Georgia that oversees the 26 higher ed institutions within Georgia. We work with higher ed institutions across the country. We work with state governments, specifically with Stacy Peace's department at the ADA Coordinator's Office. We have an Access GA contract that's been in place for more than 10 years, where we work closely with state agencies to assist them in their digital accessibility initiatives. And then federal governments. We have had a sizable contract with the CDC in the past, making sure that their COVID-19 materials are accessible. We currently have a contract with the U.S. Department of Education as well. And then we provide services to national and international nonprofits and for-profits, and then some Fortune 500s as well. Next slide. So meeting compliance standards and accessibility requirements. Some of the services that we provide include testing of websites and applications to meet accessibility compliance and best practice, combined automated and manual testing, including assistive technology. We also have subject matter experts with lived experiences with disabilities, and then accessibility trainings, a whole host of trainings related to digital accessibility, and again, from that standpoint of sustainability. And then follow-up technical assistance and consultation, that teaching people how to fish sort of mindset with knowledge transfer and sustainability in mind. And then usability testing by people with disabilities for people with disabilities. Next slide. So web-based and mobile accessibility testing, I've broken this down into the what, how, and why. So when we provide this service, we provide an executive summary and breakdown of accessibility findings in alignment with national standards and guidelines, the what. The how is comprehensive analysis of accessibility issues captured in a detailed spreadsheet and written report that offers specific remediation solutions. So again, that sustainability, teaching people how to fish. We don't just tell organizations what's not accessible. We also provide concrete remediation solutions in order to make it accessible. And then the why, MP4 videos for some of our customers, illustrating why existing accessibility barriers are an issue, facilitating better understanding of assistive technology solutions and the needs of people with disabilities. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to our eText manager, Valerie Morrison.
Thank you so much, Johan. Every time I present with you, I learn something new. I love that idea of accessibility as a journey. Someone recently posted, it came up on my Instagram feed, that said laundry is on a schedule. It's not ever complete. You are always in the process. And I think accessibility is the same way. You're never completely done. So I manage the eText department here at CIDI. I've been here for about 11 years now, and I work with an excellent, wonderful team of digital media experts. Here's one of them here on this slide. This is our digital media accessibility specialist, Nia, and we provide a wide range of eText products and services. So Stacy and Johan have been talking about these increased requirements for making sure that all of the materials are accessible. And when you're talking about accessibility, so anything that's on a website needs to be accessible. That includes any documents that you upload, anything that's uploaded to an LMS, a learning management system, any forms that are used. So we have a lot of expertise in working with higher ed and their disability service providers to try and get students the accessible textbooks they need. And we can make all kinds of different documents accessible. So these include accessible PDF file formats, Microsoft Word docs, EPUB files, HTML versions, of textbooks, which are curious, PowerPoints, making your lectures accessible, Microsoft Word docs that have long description, alternative text for images instead of just brief description, and enhanced tagged PDF files where we get in and we optimize the structure tags to be best read with assistive technology. So the reason that we have so many different file formats is that there's a really wide range of students that we serve here at CIDI. When I first started working here so long ago, I was a newbie in the e-text department, and I thought that primarily the people that we would serve would be people who are blind or low vision, who either need to get a digital version of their file to magnify it in order to read it, or who were blind and needed to have a screen reader or some sort of assistive technology read the text out loud to them. And by and large, there's about maybe 10 to 15% of our students that order from us have that disability, but the other print-related disabilities are growing, right? So I would say almost 85% of our orders are for individuals with other learning disabilities, such as dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, where letters or numbers shift and turn as someone's reading, or even ADHD. If you look at the screenshot that I have, or the picture here on the top right of the slide, I have a student who's reading his course material on a tablet, and he is looking at the screen, and he's also listening with his earbuds, and he is looking at a highlighted sentence. So the screen reader highlights each sentence at a time, and it reads it aloud, so he can read it, see it isolated on the screen, and have that auditory input that reinforces the content. So more and more we're seeing students who have various print-related disability other than blindness who are relying on these assistive technology accessible files. Also students, and this is repeating a little bit what Johan was talking about with web accessibility, individuals who have head injuries, trauma, or cognitive disabilities may also benefit from having assistive or accessible files where they're getting that reinforced content or image description of complex graphs and charts or infographics. Also auditory learners. And then I would say also the aging population, more and more people are relying on assistive technology to access their content. So Title II requires that documents and websites are accessible to individuals using assistive technology, and that includes anything uploaded to a course or to a website, and goes a little bit beyond that. So I was perusing the Federal Register, the final ruling of the Title II updates, and I pulled this quotation that I wanted to read aloud and share because it seemed uniquely specific to higher ed. So it reads, public schools at all levels, including public colleges and universities, offer programs, reading material, and classroom instruction through websites. Most public colleges and universities rely heavily on websites and other online technologies in the application process for prospective students, for housing eligibility and on-campus living assignments, for course registration and assignments, and for a wide variety of administrative and logistical functions in which students must participate. And I have the link there if anyone's curious and wants to go read the whole ruling. But this part seemed to me, it was going beyond just the classroom, and so much of the work that we have done historically in e-text at CIDI was about course material and textbooks and novels and course readers and packets, even some syllabi. But this goes beyond that, right? These new Title II requirements are thinking about the student's entire experience at the school, right? Their application documents, housing and eligibility, PDFs they might need to sign and return, course registration, if there's anything they need to fill out online. So these are just some other things to think about in the higher ed space with these Title II updates. So I just started generating a list, trying to brainstorm what documents you should think about prioritizing, what needs to be made accessible first. Obviously, you know, if it's archived, if it's not currently being used, you could set it aside, but ideally, of course, I work in the accessibility field. I say everything should be accessible, but this is where I would start. I would start prioritizing these types of documents. So anything related to health and safety information, application and financial aid information, any course schedules and registration, house and camping living assignments, and then, of course, what we focus on historically, textbooks and course materials, course syllabi and exams, and any PowerPoint lectures and notes. So this screenshot here has a laptop open with an accessible PDF, and the screen reader is highlighting a sentence at a time and reading it out loud. And then there are accessible bookmarks on the left-hand side for easy navigation through the file. So that is my very brief 5-minute overview of eText and the work that we do and how we might be able to help you. I'm going to hand things over to Cheryl Ballinger, who is our Deaf and Hard of Hearing Services Manager.
Hi, thank you so much. So I'm going to talk briefly about the importance of captioning and audio description when you're meeting Title II. So next slide. So I want to start with who does use accessible captioning, which is maybe more than you think. So yes, of course, people with sensory disabilities, such as those who are deaf or hard of hearing, are traditionally who we do think of as using captions. But it could also be people who are colorblind or even low vision. It could also be people with motor disabilities. A large population within cognitive or learning disabilities also use captioning for that dual modality, the way to learn by both seeing and hearing at the same time. That might include people with dyslexia, ADHD, autism, and people with traumatic brain injury, to name a few. Now, there's also some other people who you might not think of that would prefer to have captioning, especially in learning environments. Auditory learners, although they're focusing on listening, it's also nice backup to have captioning for what they're learning. Valerie mentioned aging populations. This is a group of people that we need to pay attention to because they haven't traditionally been known to have a disability, but due to aging into their disability, they are finding access is important to them. Social media users in noisy environments, or maybe even in environments where you can't play anything out loud, that could make captions be usable by a large majority of the people. And English language learners do use captions to support their language development so that they are able to see and hear what the screen and what the words are showing. And then a reason to share for like administrators is things like search engine optimization. So when a video is captioned, for example, it allows all the words in the text to now be searchable. And if it was just a title of a video, only those words in the title would be searchable. So search engine optimization is a great reason to increase exposure to your material if you're interested in that. CIDI offers human real-time captioning, and that's very important still for high-stakes information settings. And the high-stakes information settings are when there's a lot on the line here, such as for educational credit courses, health and safety information and education, job training classes, employment interviews, or anything else tied into a person's work life. Legal and medical settings, of course, require a human to do that, and also those other required employment interactions like reviews or reorganizations of the company, that kind of thing. Next slide. The CIDI also creates accessible videos that are very necessary under Title II for any kind of educational videos or website videos that are going to be used for education purposes. And the three key elements for accessible videos: first of all, captions need to be there, closed or open. All audio information is represented using text, in this case, including spoken content, sound effects, music, laughter, and speaker identification and location. For example, if there's a audio or narrator speaking off screen. And captions should be synchronized to appear at the same time as the words are spoken and sounds are generated. An accessible video player, if this lives on your website, would be very important. That it would enable a person who uses keyboard navigation or an assistive device to navigate the screen where the videos are housed. And then the third element would be audio description. So audio description is the visual content is described for people who are blind or deafblind. Next slide. And a little more about audio description, since it may not be something that you've thought of yet for your website or your videos. Audio description is the art of rendering visual media into sound to enable access for anyone with vision-related disabilities. It was actually pioneered in the 1970s by Gregory Fraser for live theater use, but it then became a regular addition to movies and television in the 1990s. Now it's very much important for your videos that may be on your websites or in educational settings. Also for audience without vision-related disabilities, audio description can increase information retention and comprehension for students. And the delivery for descriptions can be done via a secondary audio track or extended descriptions or even text-based alternatives. All of these will be required through Title II. Next slide. And now I would like to bring on Melissa Kepler from our Braille unit to talk about Braille services.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to tell you about our Braille department. I'm just going to start off with trying to figure out when and what we should do when we are considering making the decision to choose Braille over other alternative formats. And really, I believe the number one factor is students' preference. And this brings to mind one of my favorite quotes from Helen Keller, and I quote, "Never at any time are we so free as we hold a beloved book on our knee and the Braille dots flash onto our fingers the greatness, the wonder, the boundlessness of life." So each student receives information in different ways, and we need to consider the experience of the reader. Not all students are auditory learners. We also need to consider the timeline. When does the student need the project in their hand? The subject matter. How complex is the text? And does the project contain complicated math formulas or chemical bonds? And what about graphics? Does a project contain diagrams or graphs that might be better read tactily to understand the concept? Next slide, please. Our main area of focus for Braille transcription are textbooks, exams, and testing materials. Also supplemental educational material like daily worksheets and handouts. We also transcribe PowerPoint lectures and other documents. We specialize in accurate, timely, and affordable transcriptions of complex subject matter. This includes creating detailed maps, charts, graphs, diagrams, and figures into tactile format. Next slide, please. Our team believes in two-way communication, and we work closely with disability service providers, or DSPs, to support their efforts in the difficult task of supplying Braille materials to their students in higher level education and post-secondary. We develop creative and flexible solutions geared to the needs of the student and to the customer. We also assist the DSPs in educating school administration and faculty on the various components of the Braille transcription and production processes. We provide information to help them understand the types of subject matters and projects that are most important to provide in hard copy Braille. And we keep you abreast of the changes in the Braille industry standards and guidelines. Next slide. What sets CID Braille Department apart? Well, we are known experts in the field. Our team members are certified and experienced in Braille transcription. We are also BANA members, that's the Braille Authority of North America, and we maintain a representative on the board of directors. So we are always staying abreast of all of the policies that govern Braille. We are actively involved with the National Braille Association, and many team members serve on committees or currently hold or have held board positions. We actively train for the Braille Association, attend conferences, and are always continuing our education. We stay abreast of the national state perspectives on trends, legislation, and standards. What about turnaround and quality control? We try to provide the quickest turnaround times, but that's based on the situation and the subject matter. We never sacrifice the quality of our work for speed. Accurate print to Braille transcriptions are of the utmost importance, not just for the customer, but for the student. They deserve to have an accurate translation of print to Braille. We use and maintain cutting-edge, high-speed production equipment to emboss and bind the projects of all sizes. A textbook may be 25 or 30 volumes, and our high-speed embossers enable us to get those embossed and shipped to the customer in a timely manner. And finally, security protocols. We maintain a private and secure infrastructure that allows us to produce secure tests and exams. And without further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Doug Neal, our Student Accommodation Manager.
Hey, thank you very much, Melissa. Good afternoon, everyone. As you have learned all about the services that we provide at CIDI, should you provide similar services to your students and you need a place to safely store that information, the Student Accommodation Manager is a web-based application for managing your student records. SAM allows you to track demographics, enter case notes, report and analyze data. SAM also helps you generate your accommodation letters. And what's interesting about implementing SAM is, should you choose to use and implement SAM, our team becomes your technical support. So it's not an application that your IT team would have to take ownership and learn how to support. SAM is very easy to implement, and it's important that we share. We don't take one application and make everybody use the same application. We use the same application to build the foundation of what you might need at your institution. Next slide. SAM is also very, very helpful in generating reports. So it's not just a matter of being able to manage your students and the information specific to each student, but being able to report what are you doing in your department. So as you look at Title II changes and your need to report information that your department is doing to support your students, you might need to be able to provide reports on that. In this slide, we are providing two different images of how data can be generated and represented in SAM. To the left is an image where you're looking basically at rows and columns of information specific to accommodations. How many students receive the ability to record a lecture, or how many students are receiving alternative text. That is a very tabular table and row of information. To its right is a pie chart that represents data taken out of SAM. It can be oriented just like the rows and columns, but the pie chart might be a little bit more helpful if you're presenting to an audience that might want to know, where do you spend time with case notes with your student? Are you talking to the student about their accommodations? Are you talking to the students about resolution or problems with professors? So SAM not only helps you manage what you're doing, but it also helps you report what you're doing. Next slide. I'd like to now introduce you to Martha Rust, who is our Associate Director, and she'll tell you about Tools for Life.
Thank you, Doug, and good afternoon, everyone. We're going to switch gears a little bit here, and I want to talk to you all about another resource that you all have available in your state or territory, and that is the assistive technology programs. And the Tools for Life is the assistive technology program for the state of Georgia, but I have a couple of slides here at the end that will talk to you or show you how you can find your assistive technology program in your state. And this could be useful when you're working with your students and they need some type of other device or software to help them achieve throughout the year. So what is assistive technology? I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. And it's defined in the 21st Century Technology Act as a device, any item, piece of equipment, or product system, whether acquired commercially, modified, or customized, that can be used to increase, maintain, or improve functional capabilities of an individual. Next slide, please. So basically, AT addresses all kinds of functional needs. It could be vision, hearing, speech, learning, mobility, daily living, environmental adaptations, vehicle modification, computers, and recreation. Next slide, please. So here are the core services, and a lot of the assistive technology programs do these same core services. And this is why I wanted to talk with you all, so you knew, if you did not know, that you had an assistive technology program in your state that you can use. So we are hoping to help with information and assistance. The two big things that we have here is our assistive technology demonstrations, where an individual can come and see how a piece of assistive technology can work. And then our AT equipment lending library, which is super awesome. So then after you see how that piece of equipment works, you can actually borrow it here in Georgia up to 6 weeks to make sure it works at school, work, home, community of choice, wherever you would need that assistive technology to work. We also do trainings, group trainings here in Georgia, and then we have a funding, education, and solutions manager too. So they kind of help navigate some of that funding on ways that an individual can purchase or find that device. And then we also are very big in AT reuse, reusing items that someone no longer needs. So next slide, please. So this is how you can find your assistive technology program. You can click on this link or go right here to this website for the at3center.net. You'll be able to pull up your state, you'll be able to pull up the website, and you'll be able to pull up the contact person. So you can reach out to your assistive technology program. And I would love to encourage you all, if you are not familiar with your assistive technology program, please look them up and get acquainted with them, because they could probably help you sometime in the future. Next slide. And this is a way to connect to the assistive technology programs. If you want more information, we're actually housed federally under the ACL, and then our AT3 Center. And then if you want to find information about data in your state about assistive technology, you can go to the Center for Assistive Technology Act Data Assistance site. And then, of course, they're on Facebook as well if you want to check them out socially. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Martha, and thank you so much, everyone. I know that this was a really quick introduction, and I really appreciate you going through what it's nice to shine a light on all the important work that all the departments here at CIDI do. We would like to hear from you, the attendees of today's webinar, and after we close out the webinar, there will be a brief survey that appears in your browser window. It's going to ask you 3 very quick questions. 1, what kinds of accessibility issues would you like to learn more about? So be thinking. 2, what topics would you like for CIDI to cover or offer in possible future webinars? And then 3, what do you think the greatest challenge is to achieving accessibility in your current workplace? So when we end today, you'll get a chance to fill out that survey, and we would love to hear from you and find out how we can assist you, what more you'd like to learn. So I'm going to ask for Johan's assistance, and see if there are any questions and answers or questions that came in that we could answer for you today while we were presenting.
Yeah, thank you, Valerie. So
Sure.
we've been pretty active in the background. There's been 3 or 4 of us that have been answering questions as they come in, and I'm seeing a few more come in here. Let's see. So this has been a great program. Thank you. This is excellent. Would you be available to present to organizations who may not know of you? Yeah, absolutely, we would be. Any additional questions from any of the attendees? And like I said, we've answered many of the questions already. There have been 3 or 4 of us that have been pretty active in the Q&A, but we still have a few minutes. So if you have any additional questions, let us know. We have another, thank you very much. Will a replay be available? Yes, this is being recorded and archived. You'll be getting a fully accessible copy of the PowerPoint saved as an accessible PDF, along with a link to the MP4, and transcripts will be provided as well. And could you do a YouTube video about this? Interesting question. We could potentially do that. Absolutely. Thank you. So thank you. How can we handle this situation now that Connect is a third party? So this might be a question for Valerie. How can we handle this situation now that Connect is a third party from McGraw Hill?
Connect. So I would really appreciate it if you would type out a detailed question, or maybe email me afterwards. We're going to be getting in touch with everyone, and you could maybe submit that question to me via email so I could sit down and look at it, because I'm going to have to kind of dig in and find out what the answer to that will be.
And another question came up. I can't see any questions or answers. What about Blackboard and Canvas? So if I understand the question correctly, any course related learning management system would need to be accessible. I believe that's a question. What about Blackboard and Canvas? So those do have accessibility features built in, but it's not just the learning management system itself. It's also the content you want to be cognizant of, whether it's videos, you want to ensure that those are properly captioned, whether it's documents, making sure that those are accessible. So making those changes within the learning management system, but also ensuring that the content itself is accessible.
And I would like to add to that, we did a training for some faculty on making accessible course syllabi. And once they uploaded it to the LMS, it locked it down and made it inaccessible. So if you do upload a document or video to Blackboard or Canva or any of those learning management systems, make sure to double check and download it and test it after you've uploaded it, because sometimes there's a weird, funny interaction. It might try to lock down the content, and it might reverse the accessibility features you've built in. So I would recommend user testing as your best option.
Excellent. Thanks, Valerie.
Mm-hmm.
And then another question, which is the best e-learning authoring tool to develop accessibility modules? It's really not for us to call out one specific vendor or another. I would, what you want to make sure of is that they've done their due diligence as far as accessibility. Do they have an accessibility statement on their website, for instance? That could be a good indicator of their level of accessibility. Is there any additional documentation on accessibility? Are there any references? Do they have any accessibility guidelines they follow? And that's not a guarantee that they're going to be fully accessible, but do they comply with WCAG 2.0 level AA, 2.1, for example? Those would be good vetting questions to look at when you're looking at authoring tools. Let's see, and bear with me here. Okay, so this is a question I think more directed toward you, Valerie. How do you currently manage the PDF remediation or the large print production process on documents or websites? Do you have automations or is it a manual process?
Because we're in the that's a great question. Because we're in the higher ed space, we do rely on manual remediation. With all of our services, like Melissa was talking about with Braille, we never sacrifice quality for speed. So there are a lot of automated tools out there. There are lots of services you could sign up that promise, you know, a low price point per page for automating optical character recognition to turn a print PDF or a scanned image of a page into accessible text. But we do all of that manually, and we partner with several different groups, and we have high quality control in-house where we make sure that we're doing all of that manually because, you know, automation is great. Automation is wonderful. And no matter how many people are talking about AI or automated tools, you really do need someone providing that assurance of quality when it's in the higher ed space, when you are describing images or, you know, zoning a table to make sure that all of that data comes through accurately, because someone might be tested on that material. So all of the work we do is in person.
Great, thanks, Valerie.
Sure.
And this next question is for you as well. You don't get a break here. So keep in mind the new rule is over 300 pages. There's a lot of details to it. What has been your interpretation of the new rule as it pertains to printed textbooks that are not present on the web or LMS, or perhaps a textbook that has both an ebook and print option? I think a lot of alt media professionals are trying to determine how this new rule will affect workflow moving forward, as it seems like textbooks versus supplemental materials will have differing requirements.
That's a very complicated question, and I would love to see that in writing and sit down with it and answer it over time. I would love to have some time to throw at that question so that I don't miss any of the little parts of it. But I would just say a lot of this it's about what the faculty choose to make their students the core materials for their class. So if the faculty members are choosing the ebook version and everyone's reading the ebook version, then that's what needs to be made accessible. If they're using a print ISBN for their course materials or a course packet, then that's what needs to be made accessible. Our goal in eText is to make sure that we set that student up for success, that they're going to match exactly what course content all of the students around them in the class are accessing. So if the professor says, I want you to read pages 150 to 175, we know that that same exact page number is going to apply to that student. And sometimes between ebooks and large print versus regular print, there can be differences in the content. So we try to match what the faculty has asked for.
Excellent. And there are no more questions, and we are at exactly 10 seconds after 3 p.m. Eastern Time.
Well, thank you, everyone. We really appreciate your joining us today. And please take a moment to fill out that survey so that we can see what other possible topics we could cover in the future. And we wish you a very great rest of day.